You are listening to the FCF Leadership Podcast. This podcast has been created to help you connect and achieve your destiny as a leader. For more information, visit our website at fcf.org.
So tell me about how the influence and the heart of reaching the world with the gospel now impacts you in one Tulsa. And what does your local community of believers now take on with that in mind, knowing what you've been doing, their sister church in Ecuador, and the whole thing? What does that look like now for you guys?
Yeah, I think that for us, we used the word earlier about culture, and to me, culture is just like the way in which you do something. And I'm a big believer that you'll either have culture by design or culture by default. So right now, one of the benefits of starting something from scratch is that you get to create your culture. You can be intentional about it. So to us, having a global vision, having a vision for the world, it's at the very core of who we are. It's our DNA.
Right.
And part of it is, and so then that just knowing that that's like who you are, it's going to flesh out many different ways,
right.
So it's everything from just our own personal lives. I mean, last night we're talking to our team down in Ecuador and, brainstorming new things down there. We're taking trips down there. Part of what we're doing as a church is helping to fund some stuff that's going to be happening down there. But beyond like the pragmatic, how does it flesh out? It really is just like being committed to the thought and the recognition that, like, I think as pastors, if our vision is only for our church, only for what's going on in our city, only for our community, I think we have too small of a vision. And I think we rob God from or we limit God from how he could flow through us. Like, I don't know, I think the questions that we ask are the answers that we'll get. So if we are asking questions like, God, how can my church grow? Or how do I make a difference in this city? Or whatever those questions are, we're going to have the answers too. So and those are great questions. We need to be asking those questions. I'm not saying we don't, but I think we can add some questions. God, how can our church in this town make a global impact? What is it that you have called us to do that would be, because we have lived it. I mean, and I am like, as missionaries, not only, and we've kind of been on every side of this coin. We've done short-term missions, taken literally thousands of people since 2004, all around the world. We lived as missionaries. We pastored internationally. We're pastoring stateside now. And I think I think that if pastors could realize how critical of a role, it's not like a token thing that they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
If a church could get a vision for for what an impact they could actually do. When we lived as missionaries down in Ecuador, we had a weekly outreach to street children. The government, the municipality of Quito came to us and said, through a series of things, God opened some doors, and they came to us and said, we have a problem with kids that are living on the streets. And they'd seen some of the work that we'd done in other areas, and they said, can we partner with you? Can you do something with us to help these kids? They said, we'll provide security, we'll do the inviting and all this stuff. Like, we'll give you resources. They said, we don't have a budget, but can you do something? And so our team down there, they put together this whole, it was like a kids TV show without cameras, right? It was like, it was characters. They wrote theme songs. It was this whole thing. We called it Carpa Loca, which was the crazy tent. And this big tent would come. That was the other thing that the city provided, was a big tent for us to do it. Hundreds of kids would show up every week, these street kids there in Quito. And I share this story to say we didn't have any money to do this. We didn't have budget to do this. And literally our weekly budget with our team to do this, it was a great ministry. We had $10 a week to do Carpa Loca.
we built everything. So it's so cool how something that would be considered a limitation of like, oh, well, we have $10, let's do $10 a week for the budget, became the actual asset for the way that in which God wanted to reach these particular children. So I remember we had like the municipality come in from Quito, and they were like looking and observing what we were doing. And like we said, we had $10, so we got cardboard boxes, and we painted the boxes, and we went down to the local market where they sold fruit, and we got crates, and we built our games out of that. Everything that we had was from these little local markets because that's what we could afford, which was like literally nothing. And the municipality's comment, one of the guys came up to me and was like, what I love is that you took the elements of what these kids have. Like, their parents are the ones who work in that fruit shop over there, and they have those crates, and that's what you made your game out of. You used recycled materials, like, and we didn't even, you know what I mean? Like, we're just doing
like it was part of like this
the strategy. It was God's strategy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think in that he knew how, if we came in with our slick, like, funded by another country, like, program, it wouldn't have impacted these kids' hearts. Right. You know what I mean? But all that to say, the dollar, the gift, can literally change the trajectory of a child, the trajectory of a family, right. The way that in which a culture would view even like the big purpose of that particular ministry was to allow those kids for just a little bit of time to come and play because they worked all the time. And so for 1 to 2 hours out of their week, they got a little slot to come and play. And they heard a message about you're creative, you have hope. You know what I mean? Yes. And it changed their lives, you know?
Yeah, and I think like had a church been able to know about that and say like, oh, like, well, because it's very easy to diminish what you have in your hand.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in maximize that which you've been entrusted with. Doesn't matter how much it is.
Right.
It's parable of the talents, you know. Be faithful over little, God will make you ruler over much. Yeah. A church that had $50 to really send somewhere globally. And I'm all of this is just going back to your question, what does it look like to be globally minded? I think it can look many different ways. It can look and say, you know what? That one missionary couple that we know, let's support them. Right. Or, hey, when they come back to the States, let's buy their rental car. Or let's send, like, it'll look a lot of different ways. Yeah.
A family from your church is going down to a vacation, and you got an extra suitcase. Open the suitcase up in your church, print off a list of a missionary thing, like, we can't get Cheez-Its, or my kid loves goldfish. I mean, something like that. Right. People doing stuff like that for us, like, impacted our family, where we're like, we're not forgotten. Right. Like, and my little 2.5-year-old can have his favorite snack. You know what I mean? Like, like God sees him. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, something so small is so huge. Yes. Yeah.
It's more just the commitment to say like, okay, we are going to be globally minded. We're going to, because it's like those, and there's all kinds of psychology behind this, you know, from a secular sense, but I believe it's also a spiritual thing that, like, when you become aware of something and when you're kind of your radar's on, like, God will bring things across your path, like when you're looking, you know? Yes. So if you're not even asking the question about how do I make a global impact, then how do you expect to make a global impact? Right. But if you just begin to position your heart to say like, okay, God, how could you use us? How could you use, and trust me, I get it. I am from a small little town, small church growing up, and that small little church actually ended up sending many people that serve as full-time missionaries in the world today.
That's awesome.
I mean, I remember like the first time I went on my first trip when I was like 17 years old to Venezuela. Like, I'm from small town America. It made the newspapers, like, local boy leaves country, you know. But I say that to say, like, anybody can make a global impact. Anybody can make a difference internationally. Yeah. And why that matters, because there's all kinds of people that, you know, have different opinions on that. But Christianity and Christians and I mean, it's the Great Commission. It is not like, yes, we need to make a difference here.
Yeah.
But we also need to be globally minded.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I don't see it as optional.
Right.
I think it's part of what it looks like to, like you were saying, it's walking out, it's living Christianity. And it's also just the thought that like the little that we maybe feel like we have is more than most people have.
Well, as we get ready to wrap this up, there's a couple of things that I want to make sure people are connected to, and that is, and you touched on this here for a little bit, of thinking maybe a little bit outside the box. Instead of thinking we're a small church, we only have 10 people, 12 people, 25 people, whatever, and I have to work a full-time job as a pastor, as well as do the work of the ministry here. How can I send money someplace else or whatever? And you just mentioned it doesn't have to be anything major, just whatever can be done, making those connections. And I want to make sure everybody knows that they can, obviously we have missionaries that we support. We have leadership summits that we do around the world to raise up and train leaders to impact their nations around the world. But you guys also have Go International. That's still a functioning ministry that does short-term missions trips and all kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about Go, and even give us the information on if people are interested, want to partner with what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. There is, really our heart is to help connect churches to global vision and to ways that they can make an impact. So we have a number of ways that churches can get involved with Go International, everything from just connecting with need of what's going on in certain places, because how can you make unless you know that this Carpa Loca ministry exists in the streets of Ecuador, how do you know that your $50 could actually make a difference? So part of it is just being a connection point to let them know certain needs that are going on around the world. The other thing is sending leaders on trips, because it's like having a few people that kind of see firsthand and see, wow, this is like a real thing that's happening, and getting someone in your church that really does have global vision is key. But then also, like we do, you can send teams with us. A lot of times we'll partner with several different churches where maybe 5 or 6 different churches are coming on a trip together. That's one model that we do. And then the other is like even individual churches. Often we've put together, a pastor will contact us and say like, hey, we'd love to send a team of 25 people. Can you facilitate that trip for us? And we take care of all the details of it. And that way, like the pastor that comes on the trip, or the youth pastor, whoever it is that's leading the trip, it's like focus on building relationships, and we'll handle the details in the background. So there's many ways that we could help a church kind of make some first steps in getting going. But really, I think my main encouragement to pastors out there is to just begin to ask the question. And as you ask that question, I'm just 100% confident that God begins to put things on your heart, or that next flight you're on, you're going to be talking to somebody that, like when you start asking and position your heart in a place of seeking, how do I make a difference? The world's so big and so full of need. I have no doubt that the Lord is going to speak the right ways in which your community, your church is to get involved with making a difference internationally.
And I would just say, don't despise the small gift. Like I think of 5 loaves and 2 fish. That is how the Lord fed the masses.
Right.
I mean, that sometimes I think we're scared to like do something because they're like, well, I don't know, it's so big, it's not going to be enough. Like, why even try? But
we all are guilty of the comparison game.
Sure.
We hear of all these ministries, they gave 10,000 to this, or they gave 50,000 to that, or whatever, and then we just think, my $25 means nothing.
But your $25 can mean everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
It's powerful.
So that's really good. Thank you for saying that. I do want to let everybody know that we are in communication and strategy planning. So we're hoping that by the middle of this next year, we'll be able to have a plan in place to partner together, because we want you guys, our FCF churches, we know some of you can't send a whole team on a missions trip. So we're trying to schedule at least one, if not more, trips where we can draw people from multiple churches to build a team to go out and do some things. And we'll be partnering with Go International to make that happen. Greg and Christa have such experience, and one of the things that I want you to tell everyone is that how you measure success on the mission field, because I really love this. We talked about this once before.
Yeah. I think that for us, over the years, we've really had to ask that question, and we've had to come to a recognition that that God loves everybody enough to give them free will. Mm-hmm. And our job is to love and to speak truth. Mm-hmm. And for us, it is being obedient to be present, being willing to be present. And so it runs a little counterintuitive to maybe really even to how we first started. It's like when we were counting numbers of how many people, and I'm not saying that's wrong, right. But for us, what we found on our teams when we had quote unquote, like when it was very numbers driven, mm-hmm. and that was the metric we were looking through, what we found in people is that inevitably there's like this human side of, everybody that's like, oh man, like, well, yesterday I got to pray for 5 people and today, it's got to be 6 then, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we kind of boiled it down to say like, hey, with whoever you're with, be there,
right?
Be present, be obedient. Mm-hmm. And if you are present in the moment, present in the conversation, because if I'm worried about like, I've got to go pray with 7 more people, then I might be missing out on the person that God has brought to me in this moment. It's being mindful that every encounter is meaningful.
Ugh, it makes me want to cry just hearing you say that, because that's so much more God-minded than anything we heard. And I know it's so easy for us to, and those are celebrations, multiple thousands or hundreds or whatever of salvations. That is celebratory. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is the power of what happens on those one-on-one moments is far greater than just looking at those numbers. And so I love that that's the way the Lord led you guys. And that's one of the reasons I feel it's valuable for us as an organization to partner with Go and what you do, because it becomes more about those real impact moments. Mm-hmm. And that's what builds vision. That's what team members go back and take, not the numbers, but those real impact moments. That's what they take back and help build vision in their local church.
Yes, because that's duplicatable.
Exactly.
If I can speak to somebody at a coffee shop on a mission trip, then I can speak to somebody in a coffee shop in my own town.
That's right.
And to me, that's
so huge.
And honestly, on our trips, when people come on those trips with us, what we'll say like at the end of the trip is like, hey, like, you thought you've been on a mission trip, but the real mission is just beginning.
Yes.
You're going back home. You've been getting prepared for missions because your mission is back where you live.
I love it. Oh, you guys, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
And we're going to have more opportunities to talk more later. And I know we'll have more opportunities for the FCF family to get to know you guys more. And so thank you for taking time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the FCF Leadership Podcast, where our focus is to help you achieve your destiny as a leader. Thank you for joining us today. For more information, visit our website at fcf.org.